Good evening. Good evening and welcome. My name is Tamir Cohen. Together with my friend Guy Bachar, I'm the co-chair of the IAC Los Angeles, the organization that is hosting this event. This event is taking place in the almost brand new Shepher Center. Shepher Center is the first Israeli-American center, a community center, which was donated by two very, very dear families, the Shepher family and the Saidoff family. We are hosting a lot of events, activities in this center. This is an example to one of them. We have almost every night something. On daytime, we have Israeli scouts, we have bridge, cards, Zumba, whatever you can think about that goes into a community center. This tonight event is about Israeliness. And I'm sure that our distinguished panel will tell you a lot about Israeliness, about the meaning of the word Israeliness. When I heard the word Israeliness, I thought about the Hebrew version of it. If you take these two words apart, Israeliness, Ness in Hebrew means a miracle. So basically it's Israeliness. I do think it's a miracle to see a lot of people coming to hear about Israeliness. Another miracle is going to take place on November 3rd, in which we are welcoming and asking all of you to join us. It's a huge miracle happening in Washington, D.C. This is the IAC Kenes, or actually convention. Thousands of pro-Israel people are going to be there. Tonight's conversation is a tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen on the Israeli-American Council Kenes. We urge you to sign in. It's relatively cheap. It's an amazing event. It's very, very powerful. Thousands of people, all kinds of panel, very interesting. Of course, we're talking about the connection, the gaps, and the connection between Israeli Americans, Jewish Americans, people in Israel, people here. We're going to talk about tough conversation, religious-wise, nation-wise, the whole thing. If you are interested, and I know that you are because you're here, please join us on this Kenes, we call it, Israeli-American Convention. As I said, we have thousands of people coming. One of the most powerful events I ever been. We will show you a little bit of a clip about this, but first I want to recognize the people that came to help us today. We have Sean Even Chaim, the former chairman of the board of the IAC. We have thank you. Of course, Adam Milstein and Gila Milstein. We will present them later on. Adam is the active chairman of the board. Yossi Rabinovich is one of the members of the board of the IAC. I want to thank our staff. I want to thank Nate Miller for arranging this, and of course, Carol Karansky from the Jewish Federation. And we will show you a short clip, and then we'll present as I said, our distinguished panel for tonight.
Welcome to the third annual IAC conference, the largest gathering of Israeli American in history.
Shavua Tov IAC.
Last year, we convened here in the nation's capital with over 1,300 people. And this year, we are more than 2,100 strong.
Zion v'Yerushalayim.
I'm very honored to introduce to you tonight the senior senator from New York, Charles Schumer.
If your business or university boycotts Israel, the state of New York will boycott you. Every state should do it, and we should get that law passed in all 50 states. The United States has very few really good friends. We've got a few and Israel is among, the very best.
There could be hundreds of thousands, or as many as we can get, Israeli Americans that can integrate into the American Jewish community, which had not been done.
As I said, you're all welcome to join us. Now I want to present our panel for tonight. Rabbi Ed Feinstein, Senior Rabbi of Valley Beit Shalom. We also have David Suissa, President of the Jewish Journal and Tribe Media, and Adam Milstein, the Chairman of the Board of the IAC Nationwide. Please.
I'm waiting for the rest.
You sure? Oh, and I'll go in the middle.
You're supposed to.
I'm in the radical middle.
Yeah. Before
Welcome.
we start, I just want to give one announcement. Israel just blew out the Syrian chemical factory, the one that produced all the chemical weapons that killed their civilians. In the last hours, they bombed it, and that's a real celebration for the whole world.
I guess that's Israeliness. Yeah. What a way to start. Well, first of all, it's my first time in the center, and I've heard about it for years, and I'm delighted to be here. One of the advantages of having Rabbi Feinstein and Adam Milstein on the panel is that I could save 15 minutes of having to read their bios, because everybody knows who they are, so we can get right down to business and have some fun. But before we get into the conversation, I do want to say that tonight is 50% of the picture. Because one of the great things about Judaism is that we can all learn from each other. And in the same way that tonight we're going to focus on what Israeliness can bring to the American Jewish community, I'm sure in a few months we can do a whole other conference, which is the reverse, which was what American Judaism and American Jewry can bring to Israel. Fair enough, Adam?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that caveat, I think we ought to probably start by trying to describe, Israeliness. And I got to tell you, being in the journalistic business, we're always looking for sort of catchy new words that capture an ethos. And in the last year or so, just the word Israeliness has sort of percolated up to the surface. It's not a word that was very common a few years ago. And it's at the very beginning of the word. So I think when you're at the very beginning of the word, it's not fully formalized yet. It's not concrete. It's in its early stages what the word means. And Adam and I spoke about it, a year ago at a wedding, remember? And I think obviously the IAC is sort of introducing this notion. So why don't we start with Adam? You tell us what you think Israeliness is, and then I'll ask the rabbi.
All right, thank you, David. Good evening, everybody. Over the last 10 years, we have established here in Los Angeles an organization called the Israeli American Council, who is now, this is our base in this center, but we have expanded nationwide. We have 15 different regions. We're reaching about 300,000 Israeli American and Jewish American nationwide. And a few years after we started with the goal of uniting Israelis in town, we had identified basically a distinctive identity, the hybrid identity of Americans of Israeli descent. And what we found is that Israeliness is what defines them. Defines them is that they love America and they love their homeland of the Jewish people in Israel. What is Israelis is something that we here in America, we share with our brothers and sisters in Israel. It's basically the culture of the Israeli people, the food, the dancing, how we're making sameach. It's our language, the language of the Bible, which is revived, and now we speak Hebrew to one another and to our friends in Israel. It's our love, an unconditioned love to the state of Israel. It's the fact that we are proud Jews. We don't have to be conservative or Reform or Orthodox or secular. We are all Everyone that came from Israel is a very, very proud Jew. We are proud about our history. We're proud about our heritage. And we're proud that finally the Jewish people have an homeland, which is the state of Israel. We have different, or let's say, special set of values. We have courage to stand up and defend ourselves. We're willing to stand up and defend our brothers and sisters. And you know, when two Israelis meet for 5-10 minutes, and the next thing that happens, they're inviting each other to their home. It's this brotherness that is very unique. And this is what is Israeliness in Israel. And we contain the same kind of character here in the United States. What we did was, the IAC did beyond the identity, is to tell those people, listen, today you're not Israelis living in the diaspora. You are American of Israeli descent. This is your identity, or you're Israeli American. You have an identity, you have character, you have purpose in life, and you're part of our community, which the goal of our community is to ensure that our kids will stay Jewish, very, very connected to the state of Israel. We'll ensure that our community will always support the state of Israel, with no if, but, and when. We always support the state of Israel. We know it's not perfect, but we don't make condition to our love of Israel. We'll always be here to support the Israeli people and the state of Israel. And our third mission is to encourage leadership that can be our own leadership of the Israeli American community, the Jewish community, and Be'ezrat Hashem, if God help, maybe leaders in America, in the Congress and the Senate and who knows what.
Adam is pro-Israel. Right. So, Rabbi Feinstein, many years ago, you gave a class on Zionism at Limud. And first of all, I was enlightened, because there was not just one Zionism, and you spoke about how there were several different ones. But you also said you love Israel not like a mother-in-law, like a mother. I'll never forget that line. So, you know, what's your take on Israeliness?
Thank you for inviting me here. I also haven't been here before, and it's always a wonderful time to spend an evening with Adam and with David. So thank you for having me. And I'm in the rabbi business, and 2 weeks from now we begin Chagim. We begin Yamim Noraim, and because it's Yamim Noraim, I'm in a very Norah mood, very negative, angry mood. So I'm not going to be negative too much. And if I am, throw a cup of coffee or something at me. Here's my question to you. There's a neighborhood downtown Los Angeles called Little Italy. Anyone ever been to Little Italy? Beautiful buildings, lovely colors. They have a big festival, a San Geronimo festival every year. One of the interesting things about Little Italy is that there are no Italian people living there anymore. None. We have a neighborhood downtown called Little Japan. Did you know that? Beautiful Japanese restaurants, Japanese craft shops. There's actually a museum of Japanese culture. Only one interesting thing about Little Japan. No Japanese people living there. There's a neighborhood called Chinatown. Same thing. Beautifully decorated places, restaurants, clubs, entertainment, cultural things, but no Chinese people living there.
Now, there's a neighborhood called Pico Robertson. Sorry.
Now, I want to contrast that. That's actually my point. Well, here's what's interesting. In America, an ethnic identity lasts in a robust fashion for 2 generations. The generation of immigrants come, and they settle in America. They come willingly, or sometimes they come unwillingly, but they settle in America, and they never lose ties with the country they came from. So they try to recreate the place they came from in the new country. So they speak the language. They create a church that speaks the language, or a club that speaks the language. They eat the foods. They share the dance, right? One of my favorite places to go is Tel Aviv restaurant. Tel Aviv feels so much like Tel Aviv, Israel, you know? I'm standing there and a tiny little lady whacks me in the face and gets ahead of me in line. Just machaya. That's what an immigrant generation does. Now, an immigrant generation then raises a firstborn American generation. And that generation has a split identity because they don't quite know where their allegiances lie. Should we be loyal to the country we've come to, becoming American, or should we be loyal to the places we've come from and maintain and preserve and protect our identity. And this is a tension between these two allegiances, between the two flags that they carry. My name is Edward. My mother, who was the maskira of Kibbutz Barkai near Hadera, and my father, who was the ofed, the baker on Kibbutz Barkai, they speak fluent Hebrew and fluent Yiddish, but they named me Edward. And I once went to them and I said, Ima, why did you name me Edward? And she looked at me and she said, because that was the name of the Prince of England. And she said, my whole life I felt split between who my parents were and who I wanted to be in America. And I didn't want you to feel the split. I didn't want you to ever feel not at home in America. So I gave you and your brothers American names. We never spoke Yiddish. They spoke a little Hebrew in the house, but never spoke Yiddish in the house because they didn't want us to feel alienated from America. By the third generation, their grandparents are immigrants, but that third generation has very little left of the immigrant culture. Maybe a few cultural, a little kitschy things, right? So we get together on a holiday, and we celebrate, and we have the dance maybe and the music, but there's no essence. It's not an identity anymore. I don't know how many of you watch television, but on television there's a lot of these ads now for a company called Ancestry.com. And if you send them a little bit of your blood, they will tell you where you come from, you know? And it's so cute. The guy says, I always thought I was German. And I wear lederhosen and I go to German dance festivals. And I sent away to Ancestry.com and I discovered I'm Scottish. Now just think about that for a minute. I mean, the guy doesn't know where his grandparents came from. Think about it. It's unbelievable. Here's my problem. And I don't mean to be negative, but I'm a rabbi and it's what I do for a living. Whatever Israeliness is, it's only going to last another 20 years. And then it's gone. The same way there's no Italians in Little Italy, no Japanese in Little Japan, no Chinese in in Chinatown, Israeliness will be gone. The children of immigrants will say, yeah, I have a savta who lives in Renana. And we visit her once in a while. But so, that's my Israeliness. They'll marry Americans, they'll live American lives, they'll speak English. They'll eat falafel once in a while. If Israeliness is going to mean something, it has to be deeper than just, we're not conservative, we're not reform, we don't go to synagogue, we don't celebrate, we speak a little Hebrew at home. If that's all it is, it's great. Enjoy it. It's a beautiful thing. It's 20 years and it's out of here. But if it has a moral meaning, if I shouldn't be here because I'm a third-generation American Jew, my kids are fourth-generation Jews. At Valley Beth Shalom, where I work, there are children who are sixth-generation American Jews. Why are they still Jewish? Because Jewish adds something to Israeliness that all by itself it'll never have. It adds a moral dimension. It asks something of you. It asks you to talk about the world in a certain way, to speak about my duties and responsibilities in the world in a certain way. So I'm going to suggest a very simple thing. If Israeliness means anything, it has to be not American Israeli. It has to be American Israeli and Jewish. And then it has the possibility of surviving more than just one generation.
So, can we get one question, please?
Respond?
One question.
David, let me just respond on a few things. Well, just to the statement that, first of all, I think the IAC is considered today the fastest growing Jewish organization in the United States. As I mentioned, we started here in LA 10 years ago. Now we're in 15 different cities. We are doing events in 30 different states. Our Kenes that is taking place in November, this year, November 3 to 6, is growing in the rate of 50% every year. We started 3 years ago with 650. Then it went to 1,300. Last year it was 2,100, and now we're aiming at 3,300. 50% increase in our attendance. There is no other Jewish community that is growing today in this rate. We have a lot to learn from the Jewish community. We are new to the diaspora. As Sean said, we didn't know that we are in the diaspora, and we didn't have any institution to have Jewish life in the diaspora. We're learning from Rabbi Feinstein, from the Jewish schools, from the Jewish Federation, from other Jewish institutions, and we're fast learners, and we have a lot to learn, but we're building institutions here for our community tomorrow. Now, regarding the Persians, I think if you look at the Jews that live in America, there are 10 million Jews that have some connection to Judaism in America. 3 million of them already says we have no connection. Maybe my father, maybe my grandfather. I have no connection. They're completely assimilated, gone. Out of the 7 left, 2 million saying we're only culturally Jewish. We do tikkun olam. We know that we're Jewish, but we're not religious. We're not Jewish. Only 5 million are left. Out of the 5 million, 1 million are Israeli Americans. We have hundreds of thousands of Persians and Russians, and we have Orthodox, and we have the pro-Israel community. I think we need to focus on this pro-Israel community and not try to unite a 10 million Jewish community that doesn't exist. And this is our goal, and this is what we're doing.
Adam, let me ask you a question. How many American Israelis does IAC?
The Israeli American, we are identifying 1 million Israeli American. Let me tell you how we define them.
No, but the IAC.
We are reaching 300,000 nationwide.
Right, so 300. The reason I'm asking is, the more I hear tonight about the danger of assimilation, the more I realize how brilliant this idea is. Because in a way, what the IAC has done is built this huge tent for 300,000 Jews. And you got 300,000 Jews in there, and now the idea is to figure out what to do with them, right? But you got to figure that if you're going to fight assimilation, the first step is to build a tent. And you've built a tent. So, sorry, I had to interject. Yes,
I have the microphone here, actually.
The man with the mic.
Next.
All right.
I was patient enough.
Please, go ahead.
And
you know what? Shock us. Give us a question.
It's actually a statement, and
that's a Jewish question. It's a statement.
Ultra-Orthodox.
And a big question at the end. I'm an Israeli athlete who came to the United States on an athletic scholarship. You can feel it with my slight accent. And we came here with a 3-month-old baby. And I went to UCLA, I went to work, and I had a big problem on my hand. How can I educate my 3-month-old who become 5? Which school is he going to go to? Is he going to go to Heschel Day School with another mortgage that I need to borrow from the bank? Or should I send him to a Christian school? Or should I send him to a public school? I worked 3 jobs, my wife worked, and we sent him to Heschel. And the bottom line is that the Jewish schools in this country, in this state, is extremely expensive. Many people can do that, maybe most of them here. You talked about 3 generations. I'm first. If I look at everybody here, the average age here is not that young. We are all first generation here, probably by second generation is our kids. Then we have 5 grandkids. Every single one of them, thank God, is going to your school, Stephen S. Weiss, and Heschel. Okay, we insist that our kids will send them there. But they say it's very difficult. My son is an anesthesiologist at UCLA. He spends every dollar on his kids' education to give them the Jewishness. Now the question is, a lot of donations go to IAC. We need to find a way with the rich American Jews and Israelis to give more milgot, stipends, to kids that their parents cannot afford. Then we are not going to lose, and we'll have a lot of Israeliness in the next generation and generation.
Okay, all right. Do you have a question? Will you be the first person? There is a prize. The first person tonight who gives a question will get an article in the Jewish Journal. All right. The Jew with a question.
I can rephrase it with a question, but it's really a response to the question.
Oy, Gavolt, unbelievable. This is truly a Jewish event.
David,
I've never been more proud to be Jewish.
No, it's really...
I feel so Jewish right now. It's great.
Well, that makes me
All right,
Jewish.
can you sneak in a question at the end, maybe?
Right. I want to raise another idea to the wonderful, fertile conversation that is taking place in here. I want to raise the fact that the Israeli community in America has a gift to give to all American Jews, and this is the Hebrew language. And going along, now I'm talking as a educator, as an Israeli educator for over 50 years that has been in touch with all ages and all groups and all ideologies and theologies in America. I've studied it. And I always thought about how wonderful that the Israeli community can bring this seed of the language, and this part of it will be helpful to the second, third, fourth generation to get in touch with the Jewish sources, because Hebrew is a basis for our Jewish sources.
You know,
So
I
don't
confess,
about
that was
question,
really good. It wasn't a question, but it was really good. Seriously. Go for it. That was good. That was good. I love that.
I must be a strange duck here. I'm an American who lives in Israel for the last 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay? I have a question. I travel around the world. I see what's going on with Jewish communities in the States and so on. My question to you, give us specific examples of what IAC does on the ground, not just conferences, but active things either on campus or whatever.
All right. Thank you. Excellent question. Before I respond to you, I just want to quickly respond to the other two issues that were brought up. Jewish education is very expensive. Actually, the former chairman of the IAC, Sean Evan Chaim, has a school here on his name, the Evan Chaim Kadima. So he has been trying to reduce the cost of Jewish education for years. In fact, his school has the cheapest tuition in town. But we know that's a problem. We cannot fix it. The teacher costs what they cost. Education costs what it costs. Facilities. But we try to give, the IC tried to give some alternatives way to teach Judaism, pride, connection to Israel, to people that can go to Jewish school or cannot go to Jewish school. I am a big believer in Jewish schools. In fact, I think I made a mistake with my daughter, not sending them to high schools of Jewish education. And now I am sending 3 grandkids to Eshel on my expense and my wife because it's important, and I put the money behind it. Now, to the question about Hebrew. Hebrew is the language of the Jewish people. It's the center of the Israeli-American community. We speak Hebrew, and we believe that we need to teach Hebrew to the Jewish community because it will unite us if we all have the same language. Hebrew is a rich language. It's the language of the Bible. We try to teach Hebrew. We want to teach it more and more. And in fact, I think this is today the language of the Jewish people. Yiddish is disappearing. It's important for the Jewish community to teach Hebrew the same way that our grandparents all spoke Yiddish. Now is the time to strengthen Hebrew as the language, the universal language of the Jewish people. Now, to your question, what do we do? We have actually activities, ICS activities for every age group. So we have a group, we have an activities for people at the ages of 2 to 8. We call it Keshet Sfarim, Kehila Safat Tarbut. We send books in Hebrew for free to tens of thousands of families nationwide, and then we unite. We do events, reading, art and craft, dancing, singing about those books, and in homes, in temples, in Jewish community centers, in federation. We're reaching to all our community. We give it to anybody who sign, and we have about 25% Jewish Americans who sign. We don't check who's signing anyone, whether, we have even some non-Jews, but that's not the focus. We don't have any discrimination. You want to sign, it costs $10 a year. You get a series of books, and you get all the education. We have been running it now for about 8 years.
The Jewish Journal.
Yeah.
Jewish Journal.
We've been running this program. Well, we obviously promote it in our regions. We promote it on our website. We promote it in our conferences. We had this program running for 10 years. It was called Sifriyat Pijama Be'Amerika. Now it's called Keshet Sfarim. Then for the ages of the high schoolers, we have Tzufim, which is a great program. We have actually the Rosh Chevet of Los Angeles here with us, Tamir Cohen. We try to encourage any Jew or Israeli to go to the Tzufim. It's in Hebrew, but teaching Hebrew is part of our mission. We also have a program called Eitanim that teach leadership, innovation, creativity to young people in high school, and it's in English. It's open. We have a lot, most of the people, at least half are Jewish American. In the university, not only are we working with every student organization that exists, we have our own brand of Israeli American group called Mishelanu, of our own. You're going after the university, we have groups of Dor Hadash and Bina and IAC Lead, all kind of leadership, connection, networking, social, spiritual, business connection. And then when you go to older ages, we have a leadership group called Gvanim. Now, not only do we take a person from the age of 0 to the age of 40, 50 when he have his own kids, but we have a lot of events that are basically community-wide. We have events for the holidays, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot. We also have festival. We are celebrating the independence of Israel in festivals nationwide. It started here in LA about 7 years ago. It's called Celebrate Israel. We bring about 20,000 people here, and now it's celebrated in 15 different cities at the same time. So we have events that bring all the community from all sections nationwide. So we're building really the community of everyone, Jewish American, Israeli American, every age, every aspect.
Adam, what do you do with Shabbat, like Friday night Shabbat and stuff? Is that something that you see doing more of going forward?
It's an extremely important program. Yeah. We have a program called Shishi Israeli. So Shishi Israeli is we're celebrating the Shabbat, families and kids, and we celebrate. It's not about the prayers, it's about singing and dancing and eating.
Where does it happen?
It's happening in homes, and it's happening here, and it's happening in other public areas nationwide. There are cities in all over the United States where we bring to Shishi Israeli hundreds of people, and the cities told us, we've never seen so many Jews together in one place. I mean, what you guys are able to do to Jews, how you unite young generation with you, is incredible. There is a lot of excitement, a lot of energy that we are able to actually create.
Sounds like relational Judaism, if you ask me. Okay, 2 more questions, because I have to do homework with my daughter. Go ahead, Gina Ross.
I totally agree with you that the Nazi part of it is a very insignificant number of people, and they don't really have a base power. And I just wanted to ask you if you think that the collective trauma of the Holocaust has been so triggered in the Jewish community that it has given an enormous attention to this, and much less to the other anti-Semitism that I think you're completely right about, from the Muslim world and from the far left. So is there a way that we can do anything about bringing that kind of awareness? That is this identity of the collective trauma related to the Holocaust that has been aroused to a very hyper level and distorting our perception?
So it's made anti-Semitism look worse than it really is? Is that what I'm hearing?
It made focus on the Nazi anti-Semitism and neglect the other one, which is much more dangerous because of that.
All right. Nazi, obviously the media blow out this danger from the Nazis. Every program in the media is about the Nazis. They completely ignore what's happening on the radical left and radical Muslims. In fact, there is a new phenomena called intersectionality in the United States that unite radical left and radical Muslim on the basis that since they're the victims, they are the oppressed, they are the underprivileged, they should unite and fight together against the enemy of each one of them. So in that essence, the Jews are now the enemy, and Israel are the enemies of everyone. Gay and lesbian, which is what's going on, African American, Mexicans, Indian Americans, radical Muslim, liberal, radical left, we're all enemies because enemy of one is enemies of all. Now, how do we fight it? Let me just answer you. The Jews themselves, as I said, if Israel, if they're not proud to be Jews, if they're not proud about Israel as their homeland, they don't want to fight it. In fact, many Jews are on the progressive side, and they take the side of the media, that the Nazis are the problem. They completely ignore what I think are the more serious dangers. Now, the question is, what are we doing? We understand the dangers. The Holocaust is no longer really being taught here. It's taught in Israel here. When I mention Holocaust to people, they say, I don't want to talk about it. It's never going... Exactly. So what do we do about the anti-Semitism in the United States? I think that if we expect the Jewish community alone to solve this problem, we are fools, because the Jewish community is split. Many people in the Jewish community believe that anti-Semitism exists because we talk about it. Many people believe the BDS, the boycott, divestment, sanction movement exists because we talk about it. So if we don't talk about anti-Semitism and we don't talk about BDS, it will disappear. And that's their attitude. Or they're going to say, you know what? It exists, but we need to blame Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government because anti-Semitism didn't exist before Bibi was born. Well, anti-Semitism existed 2,000 years ago, and if you want to blame Israel, that's great. It's not going to solve the problem because it's not Israel, it's anti-Semitism. What do? I think with the Jewish people, we will never be able to defeat anti-Semitism because of the reason I said. We need to show American that anti-Semitism is an American problem. Whatever starts with Israel, never end with Israel. Whatever starts with the Jews, never end with the Jews. The enemies of Israel are the enemies of Western world, our democratic values, Western civilization, Judeo-Christian values. We need to emphasize, not just to talk. Talk is cheap. We need to substantiate that the enemies, the radical Muslims and the radical left, the Antifa and other radical groups on the left, they are enemies of America. We need to substantiate the American people. We need to stand up right now and fight against this danger, which is a danger to America, to our freedom of speech, to our democratic values, to the Judeo-Christian values. We need to show them, not just speak, because speak and speech is cheap, and we need to be in action.
I love my friend Adam and his passion, and I deeply resonate with him, but I want to show you a different point of view. I think you're exactly right. I have two answers to you. Number one, the biggest problem in America is not anti-Semitism, but philo-Semitism. Philo-Semitism. A majority culture pays the ultimate compliment to a minority culture when it allows its children to marry. The phenomenon of intermarriage is the exact opposite of anti-Semitism. If they hated us, if they thought we smelled funny, if they couldn't stand our presence, they wouldn't let their kids marry our kids. The fact is, America has opened its doors to Jews, and that's the much bigger threat than anything anti-Semitism will ever do to us. That's number one. Number two, the anti-Semitism that worries me, I think resonates with your very astute comment. Adam's exactly right. These things really shock us. But my experience with the young people that I send away to universities is not the radical right or the radical left. It's the subtle middle. It's the subtle middle in an American university campus where the word Zionism is automatically associated with imperialism, with a narrow, parochial, anti-democratic nationalism, with oppression. It's the effect of a college campus to make a kid feel ashamed that he or she is Jewish, and ashamed to say, yes, I'm Jewish, ashamed and frightened to wear a kippah on a campus, or to show up and light a menorah for Chanukah, or to show up for an event for Yom HaAtzmaut. It's not the radical right that hates us and marches with guns, or the radical left that wears black and wants to beat the hell out of all of us. It's the very quiet middle that says to a kid, if you're Jewish, just shut up about it. And suddenly what happens is we don't become afraid, we become disengaged. It's the young person who's grown up in my community and is passionate about Israel and Jewish life and Torah, and comes back 4 years after university and is disengaged. It pulls away from any association with Jewish, because it's that very subtle middle, that subtle message that an identification with Jewish is a parochial, narrow-minded, neurotic nationalism that we ethical universalists have pushed away. It's the universalism of the university campus that is a much greater threat to Jewish identity than either the radical right or the radical left.
I think that's a really great note to end the evening on.
Because it's very that was negative.
Oh no. The love affair between Jews and America is one of my favorite stories. It's one of my favorite chapters in Jewish history. The way America's opened its door to Jews. I mean, we've won. When I look at these 400 neo-Nazis in Charlottesville, I'm saying, you guys lost. We won. We got Seinfeld. America lost to the Jews, you know? So don't get me started on that, because that's a whole 1 hour. But I thought it put things in perspective, because, you know, hysterics and fear is really good for business. It's great for fundraising, and the media loves it. Because I tell you, the articles in the Jewish Journal that deal with hysterics and fear, it triples our numbers, triples our traffic. So it's very difficult for me to tone down the hysterics and fear of the Jewish Journal, because I know it's bad for business, but I do it anyway.
But I got to tell you, David, when you put one of those stories on the cover, and one issue I remember, it had a black cover, and in red letters, something about the Jews are threatened all over the world. The only person it scared was my mailman. The poor guy's Mormon, and he's a lovely guy, and he comes and he says, Ed, are you okay? Do you need us to, like, you need to come in, we'll watch you. I know that this is Rob. I know this is hyperbole, but my poor mailman is having a heart attack worried about the future of the Jewish people. So don't do that anymore.
Well, you know, October 2nd is when I start my editor-in-chief role, so I love Rob. Love Rob. Yeah, God bless, God bless. But, and you know what? It's really difficult to bring drama when there's no hysterics, and I welcome the challenge. We're going to have one more question. Go ahead. Yeah, God willing. Light unto the nations.
Okay,
thank you very much. If you want to schmooze, come.